Thanks, Stuart. I thought it's really helpful as parents to understand what our kids are using and could be using in education. And perhaps you have been using this as well in your own day-to-day life or work. So I'll talk briefly about artificial intelligence in education, looking at ChatGPT and how as a school, we are going to proceed with this new era of generative AI in the classroom and what that's going to look like for us. So, of course, artificial intelligence is not new, and it is deeply embedded in what we're doing with our phones and Alexa and Google. There are so many ways that currently we are working with it on a day-to-day basis. It unlocks our phones. If you do any sort of facial recognition with photos, all of this is artificial intelligence. Our Spotify playlists, our Netflix algorithms that are serving up what to watch next after our latest binge completes. Anything you do on Amazon, all of this is AI generated. But the impact of AI on our kids, I think, is particularly interesting. And one main way that happens is the algorithms that is driving what students are watching on TikTok. And I don't know if your kids are watching as much TikTok as my kids are, but it is a significant part of screen time. And what's so interesting about TikTok that I'm finding is that the algorithm that feeds the videos that comes into our children's feed on TikTok is it is an algorithm, and it's in a black box that people who are outside of ByteDance, the parent company of TikTok, they don't release to the public. And yet it is very powerful. And in fact, TikTok is probably the biggest user or driver of internet feed that comes into the school because of its ubiquity with youth. And so that is very much an algorithm driven machine. So most AI that we have used to date in our day-to-day lives is a simple situation where these tools are making predictions and they are feeding the users what is most likely needed next. But what we're talking about today and the profound effect that has happened since November is generative AI and the ability of machine learning and algorithms to serve up new information that did not exist before by looking at a large language model, and then pulling together disparate things to serve up something new. So there's two sort of main vehicles that are happening currently. One is around image generation, and the other is around text. And I want to start with images just because it's so interesting, and I've showed this to my colleagues before. But what generative AI is so good at is taking two disparate things and then putting them together. So I did a search on Google Images for polar bears skydiving, because, polar bear being the mascot of the school. And actually, there was no images available of a polar bear skydiving, which makes sense because, I don't want to be the person who pushes a polar bear out of a plane to go skydiving. I mean, nobody's done that before, at least to my knowledge, or at least if they tried, it was the last thing they ever did. So there was no images of polar bear skydiving. However, if you put polar bear skydiving into a generative AI model, then it produces beautiful images of polar bear skydiving. So there's lots of images of skydiving and there's lots of images of polar bears, but there's no images of polar bear skydiving until you have a generative AI model that can take those two disparate things, put them together, and then serve them up to you. So it's beautiful what is now possible with AI generating. But of course, what's also very interesting about generative AI is that it is only as good as the data set that goes into it. So how it works, it looks at the existing images that are out there that have been coded by users around the world who put tags on images. And so it has looks at, probably hundreds of thousands of photos of polar bears, hundreds of thousands of photos of skydiving, and then it makes a new image. But it's also a garbage in, garbage out sort of model that if the original data set is full of biases and stereotypes, then the images that draw from that are likewise. And so something we've been doing with our students here at the school, certainly in my class and our grade 12 data management class has really been looking at this, is can we see where the bias lies when it comes to generative AI models? And so, for example, I put in a prompt to Midjourney, which is my favorite image generator, about a polar bear wearing a tie, teaching a classroom of students in school uniforms. So that's a written prompt, and then it creates an image. And here's 4 of the options that it generated. So let's look at this image. Sure enough, a polar bear wearing a tie. Yep, check. In a classroom, clearly, very nice rendition of a classroom. And there are clearly a group of students here and they're wearing ties. But when you look at the students who are wearing ties, you'll notice that there's a homogeneity of the students. They're all boys, they're all white, and they're all sitting here in this classroom. And yet my prompt did not ask for gender or race or anything about it, but this is what was served up by the algorithm, as if when you look for a student in a classroom, that this is what a student in a classroom looks like. And this, of course, does not look like our classrooms at TCS in terms of the diversity that we are so lucky to have. So that's the image side. Let's look at the text side with Chat GPT. I'm sure you've heard about it. And if anybody listens to the New York Times, the daily podcast, they just were talking about that again this morning, one of my favorite pods. And Chat GPT is based on 3 billion words that has been taken from the internet. And 3 billion words seems like a lot, but it's actually only a fraction of what currently exists. And so what's happening is large language models are only going to get better and better and better because they're going to start using larger and larger data sets. So ChatGPT has all of this information. And then when you put in a prompt to ChatGPT, it then takes information from that to serve you up with responses. The impact of ChatGPT cannot be understated, that it has only been around for 2.5 months. And it has, according to tech columnists and anybody who follows this, that the adoption rate is unprecedented in the tech world. You can see, like Netflix, it took 3.5 years for Netflix to get to 1 million users, and ChatGPT did it in 5 days, and it has only taken off from there. And what's interesting is that Microsoft, who has invested $10 billion in OpenAI, the company that has built ChatGPT, is just about to release, it's in beta version, a search engine, their search engine Bing, which is sort of a joke in the tech world, but Bing as a search engine is going to start using ChatGPT to help serve up search results. So instead of just going to Google and getting a lot of links, some of which are being paid for by advertisers, Bing will then start to serve up answers generated by AI to the questions that you put into it. How it works is, of course, so interesting, is that it is not scrolling through the internet and then giving you finding the answer and giving it to you. Instead, a ChatGPT, these AI models are building answers to questions, word after word after word. So you put in a prompt and it gives you one word, and then it gives you another word based on the most likelihood that's the word after the word previous, and build until you have this answer, which is why it is so good at what it does, but also why it makes so many errors, because it is not looking for factual information. It's working on the information that it can already have in its language model. And so there are a lot of examples of ChatGPT giving wrong answers to things. But I want to be really clear, is that students know about ChatGPT. They are using it in different ways, in different amounts. There are a lot of educators around the world who think that the sky is falling. There's other educators who feel this is something that can be used. And I'm going to show you both those examples really quickly. But believe me, if you haven't spent a lot of time on TikTok, let me show you just a quick TikTok video about a kid talking about ChatGPT.
Let's see if ChatGPT can solve a university level math question. And if it can solve this correctly, secondary school students, y'all are literally blessed, because I also heard it can write great essays. Okay, let's get right into it. This is the simplest I could find. Let's say I have this really hard problem. I'll just copy from this page and paste it right here. And within seconds, it literally shows you how to solve the math. And at the end, the answer is y is equals to 19,500. B, let's see if it's correct. Number 4, B. It is correct. Wow. Just wow. I have said it before and I'm saying it again. There have never been a best time to be a student. And now is also the best time to hit that follow button. Thank you.
There's never been
Let's see if ChatGPT can
time to be a student. As an educator, that concerns me. but I also see it as a potential opportunity. So is this the end of education as we know it, or is this a new dawn and opportunity? I'm an optimist, so this is absolutely opportunity, but it needs to be done responsibly. And we have a responsibility as educators to teach the students in our care effective, thoughtful, ethical in ways to use these technologies with integrity. There's a lot of being written about how education institutions are going to deal with this, about whether it should be banned. And this is like the beginning of this wave of plagiarism. And when you start to wade through this, you have to look at from a lens of academic integrity. If I can put in a prompt to an essay about World War II or about a novel that I'm writing and then be served up a response to that, then how do we determine if what we're receiving from students is their work? And the stats around academic integrity are not great. Generally, there was a recent survey of over 100,000 high school students in the US, and they revealed 77% of students in this one study reported engaging in at least one academically dishonest behavior in the last month. So it's an incredibly high rate. And so if we're going to look at a tool like this that could potentially facilitate academic dishonesty, then we have to look at some options. So here are some knee-jerk reactions or things that schools are looking at, and TCS has looked at as well. What should we do with the technology? Should we block it? Should we ban it? Should we put every piece of student work through an AI detector to see if it was produced by artificial intelligence? And all of them are problematic. We could try to block it. And as a school, because of our internet firewall and pipe, the school can choose to block any particular website, and a student on the school's network won't have access to it. We do that for lots of websites. The challenge is, of course, that our children can just hotspot or use their own network, and that block is only through using the schools. So it's problematic. The blocking possible, but problematic. We could ban it, and the College Board that is responsible for the curriculum of all our advanced placement courses has taken this approach, and that they have put out a statement saying that in AP courses that students are categorically prohibited from using any and all artificial intelligence tools, e.g. ChatGPT for essay writing services, in the works that they're submitting to the College Board. So that's a very strong approach that the College Board is taking. And of course, there's many AI detectors that you can put a piece of text into a detector and then see if it was generated by AI. The problem with that is that there's also ways to bypass that, and you can write something by AI, put it into a program that then rewords it so it sounds more human, and then put it back into a detector and it passes. So there's problems with a detection model as well. And so when you look at what are we going to do with this new technology, and this is what my colleagues and I are wrestling with, that in the sweep of human history, there's been so much technology and technological change that educators have had to deal with. And if we go back to the early 2000s, when Wikipedia first came on the scene, teachers were really concerned that Wikipedia, you can't write an essay using Wikipedia because we can't trust that source. But now, 20 years on into the life of Wikipedia, studies have shown that it is essentially as accurate as Encyclopedia Britannica in terms of its error rate. And it is actually a decent place to learn basic information about a source. And so that mania that was around Wikipedia for teachers really has largely passed. And so whether ChatGPT follows that same hype cycle or not is something's going to play out over the next month and year. But in the sweep, just say it is another piece. And so there's a lot of work being done with students and teachers. And at the school, even in the past 2 weeks, some of my colleagues and I have joined a national call with Canadian Accredited Independent Schools and our network in Ontario, or CS Ontario. There have been workshops and webinars for educators and administrators about what to do about generative AI and how we're going to handle it in our classrooms. What I am heartened by is there are immediately so many teachers who are sharing information on ways that can be positively used, that here's a new tech, how can we help our students use it responsibly? And there's a lot of information being shared about effective ways to use it, amazing things that ChatGPT can do. I mean, these are things that are being shared and tried by teachers. There's really interesting possibilities for students with learning differences or using ChatGPT as a study partner. You can simply ask it for review questions, and then you can practice review on something you're testing on. So these are positive, helpful, effective ways that this tool can be used. But when we look at how we're going to assess students, if we want them to do assessments with integrity, then we have to change some of our assessment practices. And that means designing things differently by being really clear about our expectations with our kids and our students about what is okay and not okay to do with generative AI, and then judicious use of technology, either to detect or discourage or to use these tools. I think what is most interesting, though, is that when you look at the research about students that what we can do as teachers that help students be less likely to cheat, this is really heartening. And so I want to share 4 things that research reveals. So research, it does reveal that students are less likely to cheat if students feel a sense of belonging to a community that values integrity and effort. And we do that in spades here, that it is really clear at TCS that we want students to do their work with integrity and put in an effort. Research indicates that students are less likely to cheat when they believe the teacher truly cares about them. And we saw that as students, that the teachers you had the most connection with, that you felt care from and connection with, that you were going to do your best work because of that relationship-driven model. Learning is social. Students are less likely to cheat when they care about their teacher's opinion. And students are less likely to cheat when they feel invested in building their own knowledge and skills and see the purpose of the assignments and helping them do that. So I feel that we are in such a fortunate position at TCS because these conditions for being less likely to cheat are very much alive and well in our academic program and our connection between adults and kids. But I'm hoping to share with you as parents and as a parent myself of a child in grade 10, that having an open dialogue about the use of AI, about making sure they're doing their work with integrity, that needs to happen in the home. We are absolutely having that conversation with our students here, and it's only going to be more and more important in the months to come.